Morning. Make it back okay from D.C.?
Eventually.
Good. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Griffin, President of the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce and CEO Council. Thank you all for being here bright and early on a Monday. First thing I'd like to do, this is a team effort and a community effort, and I'd like to invite Dr. Karat and her entire board, folks that are here to speak and support, to just join me up here at the risk of inverting the crowd. All right. I also see we have Councilwoman Denise Moore with us this morning. Thank you very much for being here, Denise. And County Board Member Jimmy Dillon, thank you for being here this morning, Jimmy. All right. So, including today, we have 5 days until the end of the fiscal year for our state and local governments, including our schools. Our state legislature is entering its second week in a special session, costing our state taxpayers extra money. Even worse, if they don't pick up the pace, Illinois will not only end the fiscal year without a state budget, it will begin its third year without one, further impacting services and infrastructures that it is tasked with ensuring are available to Illinois' citizens. Today, on behalf of the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce, I felt it was important to bring our community together and remind our legislature and governor what is at stake. It is important, especially for our local legislators, to be told by those they represent that we are trusting them to do their job this week. Last week, Peoria School Superintendent Dr. Karat shared with our community that the district is owed $8.5 million by our state for transportation, special education, and other services. As you may remember, education was one of the only areas to be granted a budget as part of a stopgap measure, and it was celebrated as a success by legislators. However, we have learned what most of us already knew: doing only part of your job does not get us to the finish line. Our state's elected leaders are making it hard for a lot of people to do their job. Our hospitals, city, social services, and others are all having a difficult time figuring out how they can keep up with the state funding without the state funding they are owed. But we are now to a point that if a full balanced budget is not passed, it may lead to our state neglecting a promise as outlined a part of its very, very purpose. Article 10 of our state's constitution states, "The state shall provide for an efficient system of high-quality public education, institutions, and services. Education in public schools through the secondary level shall be free." I can personally tell you I know a lot of you in this room who serve on our committees and our boards know how hard we're working with Peoria Public Schools and have been over the last few years. And we have too many people working too darn hard for this to be held up the way it's being held up. So with that, I'd like to introduce our partner, Dr. Karat.
Good morning, everyone. As you know, calls to get a bipartisan vote this week to approve a balanced budget are of highest importance, especially because, as Jeff mentioned, our schools are in crisis. During this special session, we need 71 votes on a budget deal, which means that we need both the Democrats and the Republicans to come together and make something happen before Friday. Instead of working on a budget deal, though, I am sure, like many of you have noticed, it seems that our legislatures are doing everything but working on a budget. Instead, they're debating issues that have already been addressed, like school funding reform, which has already passed the Senate and the House. I have been asked over and over recently, what happens if a budget is not approved? To answer this question, I think it's important to give you some back history. You may remember it was just a few years ago that Peoria Public Schools had posted on our website that the state of Illinois owed our district more than $20 million in back payments. Despite the state not paying its bills year after year, our Board of Education, our staff, and our community, we've worked hard to continuously cut back our biggest deficit of $10 million in fiscal year 15 after the state prorated general aid by $6 million to a current deficit of $3.4 million. However, Even though the legislature and government implemented the stopgap budget for education last year, the state is owes more than $1 billion behind in payments. The state owes more than $1 billion in payment behind to schools just this past year. And we know there's $14.6 billion in unpaid bills. Schools have turned to borrowing to take care of expenses like building maintenance. And for us, it's really a cash flow issue. We have to decide which bill we're going to pick and choose. We have to pick and choose which bill we're going to pay. Unfortunately, if the state does not pay its current bills to a district of $8.5 million, we will quickly be back over the $10 million deficit mark that we worked very, very hard to bring down significantly. Without a balanced budget passed this week, we can also only assume that our anticipated funding from the state, as expected under the current formula, would not be paid. Annual state funding for Peoria Public Schools is actually, it's about $64 million. And that, of course, begs the question, as Jeff mentioned, regarding Article 10 of our Constitution, which calls for free public education. During our district's continuous fight for funding our state, we also have called for and supported school funding reform. In May, we were finally victorious, getting funding reform passed through the House and the Senate via Senate Bill 1. And Senate Bill 1 is the first funding reform bill to pass both chambers in nearly 2 decades. And it's the only piece of legislation endorsed by leaders of school districts and organizations. With the General Assembly's passage of Senate Bill 1 last month, the state's long broken school funding formula could be fixed with the governor's signature, ensuring that no district lose money and new dollars are driven to the neediest districts. So we urge the governor to sign the bill. We also urge the passage of a fully funded K-12 budget. We plan to open our doors as scheduled on August 16th for our kids. And if there's no state budget, we will continue as long as we can keep our doors open. And let's be clear, this is not a downstate issue or a Chicago issue. It's not a Peoria issue. It's a state of Illinois issue. Today, I am joined by my colleagues from our Regional Superintendent of Education, Beth Derry, and Canton's Union School District 66 Superintendent, Roth Silverstone. And I'll ask them to come up and make a few comments. Ms. Derry.
Thank you, Dr. Karat, and thank you for all of you that joined us here today. I want to take a moment and talk about 2 things, consequences and an explanation of, there is, of course, the funding that follows all of our students to our schools, and we obviously need a budget to that. But please understand, there's a whole other side to the education budget that runs through the Illinois State Board of Education, and that budget is just as critical. There's a new hashtag that I'm starting called Annual Trauma. Every year now at this time, it becomes a crisis because of that Illinois State Board of Education budget. I have only received, for the multi-million grants that I'm the fiscal agent of, I've received 4 payments this year. I'm owed more than 50. And you have to use those monies to try to manage your way through a school year. And the cash flow becomes very, very serious. So we plotted out exactly how we were going to make payroll to June 30th, and we could make it to the penny. And it becomes so challenging that we got $1 million payment from FY16 in March. And my staff knew that I wanted to be notified immediately. They literally sent me a picture of those checks, because they knew that's how we could make payroll to June 30th for the employees that we have trusted to deliver services to the children and families of Peoria County. So now the consequences as we approach June 30th. From my office's perspective, in the Peoria Regional Office of Education, what does no budget mean? First of all, we have a high school that we operate at Wildlife Prairie Park that is a alternative school for students that need a second chance. We have calculated to the penny we can stay open for 1 semester. Number two, there are the multi-million-dollar grants and things that we operate out of the Illinois State Board. What are the consequences there? It means we will not be bringing staff back and implementing services. It will be delayed for things such as truancy services, services to homeless students, bus driver training and safety, inspecting buildings. The list goes on and on. We have preschool for all. We will not be opening those classrooms. What are those parents to do when they're looking for care? We have to delay that, and then when we bring them back, will there be enough time to complete a school year? Those are the things that I am considering on a daily basis as we try to manage our way through what's another annual trauma. So thank you for all of you that are here today to say enough is enough. We need a budget because we've done our job and we've planned and we've put forth budgets. So my staff knows they have their budget and they have their doomsday budget. And we are hoping that we don't have to go that direction. We need a budget now. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to the Canton Superintendent.
I'd like to thank the Chamber for inviting a representative from Canton School District to speak this morning. I'd also like to thank Dr. Karat for so eloquently stating this problem. Currently, the state of Illinois owns Canton Union Schools $1.4 million. In the entire state, the state of Illinois owes all schools $1.1 billion. What does this mean? It means 2,600 kids in Canton schools are being placed at peril. Overall, 2 million school children in the state of Illinois are being placed in peril. And quite frankly, I find it disgusting. What does this mean for us? If there is an absence of a state budget, it means that we will lose 47% of our funding for our school district. That's non-sustainable. And at this point, it's a mystery how we're going to be able to open our schools when we've been completely abandoned by the state legislature and the governor's office. My hope and prayer is that the state legislature, the governor, and the speaker will adopt a fair budget and also fair school funding. Thank you very much for inviting me here today.
All right, so as I stated previously, the Chamber's investment and the volunteers who spend so much time working with the Chamber, it's a quality of life issue for our families and our kids, and it's also a workforce development issue, plain and simple, and that's why we're passionate about it and put so much work into it with our schools. Further partners we have are the social service agencies across Greater Peoria, and representing Children's Home today, CEO Matt George.
Well, thank you. You know, a lot of times when education's brought up and social services brought up, they really act like, and the media doesn't talk about like it goes hand in hand. And actually, there is a direct correlation. It's about our kids, it's about our community, and it's about the people that work at these agencies and these schools that's important. We have so many kids that need our help. We have so many people that need our help. And it is our job in social service and in this community and all of the great teachers in this community to take care of our kids. That's what they're charged with. You know, you look at what's going on right now in behavioral health, there is a crisis, period. And so when you see a lack of budget and what that does to not only the schools, to the nonprofits, when you take causes like homeless youth that Beth talked about earlier, and it's one of our programs at Children's Home, or you take truancy and that effect that it has, lack of nutrition, dental problems that these kids are having. They all are combined problems of not only our state, but our individual communities. So it's really a problem we all have. Every single person in this room has. So it's our job, and I ask both sides, please get together, stop this nonsense, and let's get back on track and help our community out. Let's think about the kids and everybody that's involved with this. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lorraine Bryson, president of the Tri-County Urban League, and I would just like to say that we need to keep in mind that the state needs to work with us. We work together as a community. The Urban League, many other social service agencies, Children's Home, we all come together in our community to try to make a difference for our kids. And at the Urban League, we believe that education is a civil right. Not only is it part of the public law, but it's also a civil right to everyone, because without a good education, your future is dim. We also work together with other businesses, with Alignment Peoria, which is a community effort where we are working together with the school district, trying to make a difference for our kids in our community. And we can't do that if our state does not come together with a budget to help our community to work together and be collaborative. And people always say we're in our silos. Well, that's not the case in Peoria. With Alignment Peoria and the various efforts we have around education, we're trying to do our part. Now we need the state and the governor to do their part as well. So we just hope that they would come together very quickly, because the situation is very dire in social services. A lot of our services depend on those state dollars, whether you're a large agency or a small agency, and we need the state to get us a budget so we can do our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we have a few minutes for questions. Guys, Chris, thought you'd break the ice for us.
Oh, I'm happy to. Is the chamber behind everybody else in urging the governor to sign Senate Bill 1?
The Senate Bill 1 initiative is not, it really happened so quick, didn't happen so quickly, but it never, the chamber board didn't officially take a vote on that. So the answer is we're supporting our partners who have, closer look on specific legislation. But that's not one that traveled through the chamber's government affairs committee or chamber board.
Well, it's been a month. You guys haven't had a chance to take a look at it.
Next. No, Chris, honestly, I mean, it's, we work with partner organizations, and we don't take every piece of legislation through our government affairs group.
This is the most major school funding reform legislation that's come through, the only school reform funding reform legislation that's come through the legislature in decades.
Yeah.
So you're not endorsing either funding formula plan?
The Chamber of Commerce board did not officially vote on that. That does not detract from the fact that we're partners with the Alignment Peoria group and our partners, as we would be with Unity Point Health or OSF. There's something specific to better their business.
Yeah, and I applaud the group for coming up with this new bill, Senate Bill 1124. It actually will pump more money in Peoria. Peoria District 150 would receive $5 million versus Senate Bill, which is 1.5. But it has not gone through the process. We don't think it's really going to go through. I mean, it was one of those things that just sort of popped up overnight, and yeah, theoretically it's more money for Peoria, but everyone has to save face, right? I mean, Chicago needs to go to the constituents and say, hey, this is what we got for you also. So we don't think that's going to go very, very far. Whereas Senate Bill,
what the governor wants.
yeah, whereas Senate Bill, and it does, it has 90% of what he wants, and Senate Bill 1 has went through that process and went through the due diligence, and as I referenced, went through the House, went through the Senate, so we just need a signature. Whereas the other one, it's at its embryonic stages.
Beth, can I get you to come back up for a minute and spell out particularly how much you guys are owed and the number of employees behind and what some of those programs that you're concerned about do, as far as does this mean no more truancy checks of any kind through ROE, no more services of any kind through the homeless? How many kids does the Preschool for All initiative serve?
Well, let's start with this. The State Board of Education grants are allocated on a monthly basis. So I should be receiving a monthly payment starting July 1 of 2016. Of all the grants that I manage, I have received 4 payments. So and the part that's so challenging about it is you don't know when they will come in. That's why I got the text message and a photograph of the checks from my staff, because it's a mystery as to when they will arrive.
So the 46 that you haven't gotten, how.
Exactly. So I don't have exact numbers on that. I did not do that exact calculation. And so I do want to share this though. From last year's annual trauma, I did lose 2 staff members because that lack of security and predictability, the staff turnover and the challenges and the trauma it causes them, worrying about what that's going to be like come July 1. And let me add, I'm a state employee. I'm hoping as of July 1, I get a paycheck, and now when I go to the doctor and to the dentist, I'm asked to pay up front. That's new, just started happening because of the delays on all of those. And so it's just that, it's that constant repetitive trauma that staff members, and I know that you've had those challenges as well, Mr. George, of that turnover. But I can get you those numbers because we're not only not having a budget moving forward, but we're not made whole from this year, and that makes a challenge.
So you said you have a budget and a doomsday budget, so quite literally, are you planning 2 budgets for the next year?
We plan 3. Plan number 1, regular budget comes through, we carry out a school year just like we normally do and can professionally address the needs of Peoria County. Budget number 2, cash flow issues. What does that look like? We triage that. That's what we did this year. So there came a point this year where we cut off everyone's travel reimbursement, any kind of mileage. Truancy officers drive all over Peoria County. I at least wanted to be able to make payroll, so we stopped some of those things to make sure we could make it to June 30th with payroll. So that, I call that the triage budget. That's kind of the middle of the road when there's cash flow issues, and then doomsday is there's no budget. And, well, when there's no budget, you don't actually make a budget for no budget, right? So what that looks like is, when might we bring employees back on board if a budget does get passed? So what that looks like is, end of July, when can they start? August, when can they start? It's putting things off, hoping to get at least some services for the school year, because then there's the other thing about grants. If you don't spend the money and use it for the services it's intended, you have to send it back. But if you don't give me enough time to deliver the services because you didn't send the money when I needed it, then I have to send it back. So there are many, many consequences of all different layers.
I was wondering, could Canton School Superintendent come and talk to us a little bit about the same thing? Do you have a big contingency plan, or how are you?
We've got 3 options. None of them are very good. One is not to open. 2, and I think this is very important because many school districts throughout the state are facing this. The second option is we can open up, burn through all our reserves, and then close. Or we can open up, burn through all our reserves, and max out our bonding capacity. It would be by borrowing money. And that leads to another conversation. If there's no budget, I guarantee you by Monday morning, our bond rating is going to be right down there with the state of Illinois, which means if we're forced to borrow money to reopen or stay open, then we're going to pay more in interest rates. And there's something else that I want to mention, and this, I mean, we're all here from education, but this is a much bigger problem than just simply education. Think of all the jobs that'll be lost through road contractors because of this ineptitude or terrible thing that's happening in Springfield. And I don't think you're not just looking at Canton, Illinois or Peoria. These are problems that will be faced across the entire state by Monday morning.
You know, there's a rumor floating around Springfield, and there's a real possibility that it could happen. We're hearing that there may not be a budget until after the elections. What does that do for you all? I mean, we've heard that. That was a rumor last year, and that actually, well, they had to stop.
There's a lot of rumors going around Springfield.
But given the situation.
I think that's what's important to remember, and I'm not speaking for anybody else here, just myself, is this has been going on since 2008. What difference is it going to make by an election? I remember when first year I was a superintendent, which was 2008, is when the state started skipping general state aid payments. So we're going on 9 years now. So this is nothing new, and nobody should be surprised by this. So it's nothing new.
Is there any confidence from anybody that cooler heads will prevail in Springfield and something get done by Friday?
I think I'll let somebody else speak for that.
Turn it over to Jeff.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think folks get up here. Friday afternoon, Dr. Carrot and I were just on the phone. We usually talk at least once a week, and we just started talking. And all of a sudden we said, we got to do something. I don't know how I get out of bed in the morning if I don't have some level of confidence that something's going to get fixed. And that's what the Chamber of Commerce is all about with our partner organizations. So we have 5 days to do it, including today. And like the superintendent said, the consequences, you know, people like myself and economic development people get paid to bring business and to grow business. It's a hard thing to do right now with the state of the economy and the state of affairs. And I have confidence that our leaders, we talk to our local leaders all the time, and I'm confident something can happen. It's going to have to.
Are they giving you any indication something's going to happen?
Yes, to a degree. And then they also give an indication that there's, you know, it's just like walking in mud to some degree. Last year, maybe 2 years ago, we sent a letter, Government Affairs Committee in the Chamber, this did go through the process, Chris. We sent a letter, right? That's what you do when you get mad, you send a letter. But it was a letter with advocacy and a call to action, and we sent it to our local leadership. And about a month later, I received some nice responses, especially from our local leaders. Speaker Madigan replied to me to Jim Griffin. My name's Jeff Griffin. This gentleman, and he knew exactly what he was doing, you know, and because he's done that before. So that level of disrespect, I guess, to the organization, those are the things that get them bogged down. But when you look at our local leaders, we're in close contact with them.
How assuring is it that our local leaders are there fighting for us? We do have all of our representatives and all of our senators in Springfield fighting for us, but it's the kind of the Chicago group that's kind of pulling stuff on.
What's the question?
Do you have confidence that our local representatives could maybe get that Chicago group to work?
Yes.
What about the suggestion, the notion, and this has come from the Senate President saying no stopgap. He doesn't have the support of his members for stopgap. We've had at least one local lawmaker say we need to shut the schools down in order to get people's attention on this. For those of you who are education leaders, do you think that finally will galvanize the public and force a solution? Not the threat of a shutdown, not the threat of not being able to do things, but if it comes to it, actually doing it, actually not being able to start classes. Is that finally what this is going to take?
I won't recommend that to my board, and we have 2 board members. If you guys want to take it, I mean, feel free to make some comments, but that's not my recommendation. A kid should not have to be the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, my name is Dan Walther. I'm on the board. Our goal is, as it is with Canton and the other places, we want to provide an education as long as we can. The problem is, without a budget, you know, we're limited. I mean, as Canton is, we may be able to get through the first semester, and then we face the same thing that you do, is that we're through a borrowing thing, if we can stretch that out. And I think it's real important that what the gentleman from Canton brought up, superintendent brought up, is that we've worked behind Dr. Carrot and the support that we've had. We've actually incrementally raised our credit rating. But the problem we're going to have is if we don't get this funding and we have to borrow, you have to understand right now where the state is, we're one step above junk bonds. The teacher retirement system can't even buy our bonds. We're so low. That's true. They can't go to that. If you go to junk bonds, we're going to limit the number of people who can come in and even get our bonds and stuff with it. So it creates a problem. If we don't get this thing done, it's going to even cost us more to get out of the mess we're in. So now, I understand when the senator said that, what he was talking about, because I think that's the reason I appreciate the chamber doing this. This thing is very serious, and we're talking about probably decades to repair the damage that we're gonna have to do to get back if we don't get this thing settled by the 30th. And so that's the reason we're all here and trying to do that. And so appreciate any other questions you've got, but that's where we're at from it.
I want to make a comment to that effect. One comment I want to make to that question is I taught kindergarten and first grade for 17 years for Peoria Public Schools, and what did I teach? That you collaborate, you cooperate, you don't hit your friends, of course, and that you solve problems. And as an elected official here in Peoria County, party elected official, when you're elected, you govern. And we have forgotten how to govern. It has become so tribal of one party and one party that then you have to come together. Children don't show up at schools with D's and R's on their backs, and their parents. You represent all children once elected. So that we have to govern. It's time to come together and implement all those great things. You know that poster, Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten? Why don't we use that? We've got to come together because it's not about which party is going to win this, because right now we're all losing.
Yep, and we have to compromise.
Yes.
Right? You can't get everything you want, and so that's very, very important.
Yes.
We have to compromise and not use mean words, because mean words then results in hurt feelings and minimal results, right?
That's right.
Can I respond to your question? I think your question was a what-if question, but really it's a when question. If there's no budget, there's no revenue. So it's a point where many school districts are going to have to close. What we've done at Canton recently is we've started to educate our community through a series of town hall style meetings. And it's benefited us greatly because a lot of our stakeholders weren't really aware of how bad this crisis is. But I think there's many school districts now that have a reserve of less than a month, especially the small rural districts. If this continues and schools begin to close, I think you're going to see a lot of parents that are going to be energized by it. I think you're going to see employees who are going to lose their jobs are going to be energized by it, and they're going to want to hold somebody responsible. And if school districts have the foresight to educate their stakeholders, they're going to hold the legislatures responsible, because that's where it lies. That's where the problem was created and continues to fester.
I have to ask because part of the context of the day is State Senator Weaver is joining Jason Barrican in promoting the so-called evidence-based model. Either Mr. Syvertson or Dr. Karat could talk about if that were the funding model to pass through along with the budget, is that enough to sustain another year, or would the losses still be substantial?
Yeah, I'm in constant contact with Senator Weaver and also Representative Spain and all of them, Kayla and Gordon Booth, and they're working very, very hard for us. And we had a conversation, actually, Jeff and I, this weekend with Senator Weaver regarding Senate Bill 1124, and it looks very good for our area. I applaud the effort. As I said, it would bring over $4 million more than what Senate Bill 100, and that would obviously help towards balancing our budget. We would be able to actually balance our budget with that proposal, but you know, it's one thing to present an ambitious proposal, and then it's the other thing to think realistically through the very end, right? And we talked about the other one. It's gone through all the process. It has 90% of what the governor requested, and it just needs a signature. So that's what I mentioned in my remarks initially, focusing on getting a full, because we could go through, we could pass all of that, and if you don't have a budget, it's all for naught.
All right, nobody's going anywhere. If you have any follow-up questions, but I know some folks do have to go somewhere. So thank you guys for being here today, and I believe we have Senator Weaver here at 2 o'clock today, right, for this presentation. If people were not aware of that, it's 2 o'clock in this room. All right, thanks, you guys.
PeoriaLife.com